Hi guys, Richard from SharpshootingUK here. I've got a couple of high-end scopes here that I wanted to talk about and compare and discuss where they fit in the range. One is a Swarovski Z4i 3-12 and one is the new Zeiss HT. Now, two things about these scopes, particularly the Swaro, and this caught me out. Given that it's a Z4, not a Z6, I kind of presumed it wasn't the top of their range optically, and with it only having a 4 times mag range, i.e. 3-12 rather than 6 times mag range of the Z6, 3-18, that it would be optically lower. Of course, having discovered that the highest transmission offered by Zeiss is in a straightforward 4 times scope. The HT series is 4 times mag range, this one the 3-12. That's optically their best. So it got me thinking that perhaps the Z6, given that it's a 6 times mag range, would be a couple of % lower than the Z4. And if I wanted to compare the best of the best stalking scopes to the HT here, then I needed to look at the Z4i. And right enough, Swarovski give it a couple of % higher transmission in their figures. So I got one for review, and here we go. So I got the HT, and I've tested various other alpha scopes before, and I was immediately very impressed by the transmission in the HT. Bottom line, by coming back down to a 4 times mag range, this scope is better than the Diavaris, and that's really impressive because they're just about the best money can buy. So I wanted to see what Swaro had to offer, so I got this Z4i, which, you know, isn't their flagship Z6i, but perhaps by going to a 4 times mag range rather than stretching things to 6, it would be better. And indeed it is. And whilst I'm incredibly impressed by how little Swarovski give up in the Z6 optically by having that massive mag range, it really is tiny, but it is there. And going back to a 3-12, you get a couple more %. You get a little bit extra pop, brightness, resolution. They're just slightly better. Now, to compare the two, you have to break this down. Optically, we will discuss. And then we'll look at turrets, illumination, etc. You'll notice that this HT here is a very rare model with the ASV Plus, which I've actually slightly modified on the elevation, but it's also got what I call proper clicks on the windage. So it's not quite a fair test, but I'll say this, for a tactical shooter of any type, there are very few 3-12s with decent turrets. PM2 is one that springs to mind. That's very popular. I absolutely adore this thing because these turrets enable me, especially with these ASV Plus rings, I can put this on a loopy little caliber like this treble 2 here, which is my truck gun, and I can just whack that round to 300, say, and it's on. It's a really nice system, and the windage enables me to dial properly. So, you know, it's a clever scope by Zeiss in that they're competing with the PM2 for the tactical market, the dialers, the gong ringers, you know, and they're also offering it with hunter turrets for the stalkers. I think that's really clever. It must be said that the illumination on the illuminated model, which this isn't, is beautiful. Tiny fibre optic dot in the middle, no spill, no problems caused with the contrast, even with the dot bright. It's daylight visible, it's really subtle at dusk, it's just beautiful. we'll talk about the Swarovski system shortly. So sticking to the Zeiss, I love the turrets, and it dials well, and it's in centimetres, 1 centimetre at 100 metres, which actually I'm really liking. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm a big fan of how this works for me as a dialer. Ergonomics are fantastic. It is obviously an alpha scope, but I'll say this: they've changed the glass from their normal supplier, and they're using Sharp HT glass in this, and it is industry leading. However, and don't get me wrong, the brightness, the resolution, it is above the level you would normally get with a Victory. It's really very impressive, even compared to, well, as I say, previous Victories. But it has introduced a couple of little flaws that are little bits of character. Nothing major, but it isn't perfectly flat edge to edge. When you pan it, it does roll a bit. There is a fairly significant amount of chromatic aberration for a scope of this class. You get your eye line right and it disappears, but it is a fussier scope, especially given that the Victories are famous for this flawless eye box, and especially given how low mag this is, and indeed how low zoom it is. You know, it's not an 8 times mag range scope, you know, that goes from 5 to 40. You know, this is a 3 to 12, and the perfect stick it anywhere in front of your face and there's this perfect eye box at all angles that we've come to expect from the Victory is missing. But that said, I'd happily take the optical advantages against those small flaws, and I am simply nitpicking. What is interesting on that note is that this fairly little known, to be honest, Z4 here, which seems to be kind of mid-range in their catalogue, is in fact the highest transmission they do, and it is absolutely sublime. It is the match optically of the much touted and highly regarded latest Victory HT. It is the match all day. It is less fussy in the way I've just described. Is it better? Is it worse? Honestly, I cannot separate them. Apart from the fact that the Swaro is slightly less fussy in a couple of tiny little ways. I've got to say that the Z4i, which hasn't been, you know, shouted from the rooftops like the Victory HT, it is certainly the match optically. It tunnels up to nearly 4 at the bottom, which annoys me very much. You've got a 4 times mag range scope, which isn't exactly world beating, that doesn't even do 4 times. It's more like 3 times. So that's really annoying. A lot of scopes do it. It seems to be the better scopes. I don't know why, but it's basically a 3.75 to 12, which is a big cross in the box for that. The Zeiss tunnels minutely, but it's only like sort of 3 1/4. So that's a plus point for the Victory HT there. But neither of them should do it at all. When I buy a 3 to 12, I want it to go from 3 to 12. Anyway, moving on. It has, instead of the illumination on the Z6 series, that is down on the ocular, and I rather like. Instead of that, it's up on top with this tall turret, which isn't a big clicky turret like that, like I thought. It is just illumination. Okay, that's a normal Hunter turret under there, as I'll show you in a minute. And it is very much more old-fashioned. When you turn it up bright, it illuminates more than the center. You know, it starts to bloom out into the whole crosshair. If you put it up too high, ruins the contrast of the scope. It is an analog system, much perfectly acceptable, but not the quality of the modern systems which are using tiny little dots and go from subtly visible in dusk conditions right through to very bright for daylight. It just isn't up to date in that way. I personally dislike the tool turret here very much, and I like the Z6i system where it's on the ocular. But I suppose on a fine stalking rifle that is a better line like that than having it on the ocular. Horses for courses, really. I'll show you the turrets now because they're really rather different. So this is the illumination. You pop it up like that and nudge it to change the illumination. Kind of cool. And you take the whole lot off. The whole lot, which you can leave off if you don't want the illumination at all, and just put a normal cap back on here, which is supplied. And then here are your normal clicks with your lift to reset that these guys do. Standard centimetre at 100 metre clicks, no problem there. No major markings for dialing or anything like that, but that is what it is. It's a hunter turret. And it's not waterproof without a cap on. So some people love this, think it's the coolest thing. I think it's a bit of an afterthought myself, but it will do the job. But it isn't as good as the modern dot technologies from from some of the other scopes available. Under here, you've got a fake cap with spare battery for the illumination in. Nice enough touch, that. And then underneath it all is your windage. Very interesting, different system. It's not a dialing scope. You can't get a tool turret for it. It's a stalking scope. But I tell you what, optically, it is certainly the match of the Victory HT. And that is really, really impressive. But I think the lesson I've learnt, I've also learnt this with the SLC binoculars, but that's a different story, is that the top of the range scope with the massive mag range will be marketed as the flagship of the range. But if you're looking for the purest optical experience possible, these guys are going to be able to give you a couple of % more transmission by going back to basics, and that is a 4x mag range. The HT is a sublime scope. It really has moved the bar forward, despite its little foibles, which are no biggie, don't get me wrong, but you know, it is a game changer. And I, with this particular model, love the turrets, but it's good that they offer them, brilliant that they offer them, but it's unfair to compare it to the Swaro as a stalking scope. But optically, the Swaro compares, apart from the tunneling, which is frustrating, it is an incredible piece of kit optically, and I think it deserves a bit more credit than just sitting there as a mid-range scope in their catalogue. It's not mid-range, it's world-beatingly good, even to the standards of the new, much-touted HT. So have a look at it. If you want a hunting scope, then there you have it. You've got your normal clicks. If you want the illuminated model with the big turret on the top, then great, the illumination works. It's not the world ground-changing best system yet made, but it is going to illuminate the ret, and it is adjustable in two ranges, a kind of a dim range and a bright range, and it works fine. It works fine. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, but it is. It's there. It's something. Be even better if Swarovski offered tool turrets so that you could turn it into a competition for a PM2 like this, but this is not the scope for that. I am very interested in the direction Swarovski are going on that front with the new Z5. Watch this space for a hot review on that. I'm very, very excited about that. But this is an old school stalking scope, but by God, it's good optically. So you want to have a look through one of these if you're looking for a straightforward hunter turret, illuminated if you want it, stalking scope of the very best quality in the simple 4x mag range format. It's been a real surprise, this Z4i, so there we go. That's kind of more praise than I'm giving the HT, because the HT is people know that it's groundbreaking, and indeed it is. The extra little nudge of, not field of view, that hasn't improved, that's excellent anyway, but the resolution, brightness, saturation, all of the important things are there. A couple of little flaws have crept in, but I don't really care. It is a joy, and I think it's awesome that you can get the tool turrets on this scope, including windage. That's great. That offers people more. You know, you can have it low pro and covered, or you can have it tool and tactical. Outstanding. I like the box system that they use, where you don't get iffy elevation adjustments when you're at the limit of your windage. That's very clever. I like that. Well done, Zeiss. And I'm really thinking that the ASV Plus is not a gimmick. It really can help you make quick, decisive shots for elevation, having matched it to your caliber. These rings that you put in, just look at the bottom one, because the top one I've added in myself. There's normally only one. I've got a separate review on running these two rings. But you see that ring at the bottom, 1.2.3. That's matched to the very loopy treble 2 caliber that this is on. The flat one, the flattest one, works great on my 204 Ruger. That'll work on 22 to 50. Then you've got, you know, really loopy old calibers, big magnums and such like, which you can put a ring on for. And if the thing you're looking at is, you know, long range, then you can simply dial around. It's flawless. I really, really like it. It's a very user-friendly, foolproof system. I also think the turrets look good. Very, very taken by this scope. So there we have it. Zeiss HT, world-class 21st century stalking scope. As good as you know, people are saying this HT glass is. The Z4i is, unbelievably, is the match of it, despite no fuss having been made about it at all. It is stunningly good. It's better in that it's less fussy, it really is, but it's worse in that it tunnels a bit more at the bottom. So, you know, take your pick. The illumination is quirky, works, but is not the standard of the modern systems, but it's better than nothing, and you are stuck with hunter-style turrets, which I'm sure will bother very few people. It's a cracking scope. So there we go, guys. Little bit of info on these two top quality stalking scopes. Bye for now.